Have you ever been trying to accomplish something big but fallen short? Of course you have. If you haven't really tried to do anything, right? But have you ever fallen short and then afterwards felt frustrated, defeated, maybe like a failure? I'm hallucinating that the answer is at least somewhat of a yes, and I know exactly how you feel. Like you, I felt exactly like that many times in my life. As a mindful mind hacking guide, college professor, and martial arts instructor, I also have worked with hundreds of people who, as a result of their stumbles, have fallen deeply into the trap of self-doubt, sometimes to the point of depression and despair. Would you like to know the main source behind this self-doubt? It's your self-critic. Everybody has a self-critic inside of them, a critic that points out your self-perceived flaws. Now, sometimes that self-criticism can heighten your self-awareness. For example, you don't do well on a test at school or a presentation at work because you didn't prepare enough. Your self-critic can help you learn from that experience and perform better in the future. You see, it's only when we're willing to honestly examine ourselves that we can learn to overcome areas of weakness or unwanted habits. Now, this type of self-criticism leads to personal growth, but self-criticism can often become a barrier, blocking your progress, leaving you feeling frustrated, defeated, kind of like a failure. And after a while, this kind of critic can prevent you from taking risks. And when you don't take at least calculated risks, you stagnate. And that reminds me of a client I once worked with. I'm going to call him Steve. Steve opened a painting business because he liked the idea of being his own boss. He worked hard, and over time his reputation for excellent work got around. And as a result, he started hiring more painters, and soon he was grossing over $1 million a year. Now, when he came to see me, he had just gone through a period where no matter how hard he worked, he just couldn't get his business to grow anymore. In fact, for the past 6 months, his gross had actually gone down by a couple of grand. Well, Steve felt stuck, defeated. He told me he was thinking about either selling it or closing his business. Have you ever felt like Steve? Now, I don't necessarily mean you had $1 million business that wasn't performing as well as you wanted it to, but you felt stuck, like some unseen force was holding you back? I know I have. And you know what I found? A lot of times it has to do with that negative self-critic you have inside of you. Now, there's a couple of types of ways you can negatively criticize yourself. The first type of negative criticism is internalized self-criticism. Now, this type of self-criticism is the result of a desire to be perfect. Let me ask you, is anybody perfect? Of course not. And since nobody's perfect, this desire sets you up for failure. And it's easy to find yourself deficient. In fact, it's so easy, we do this all the time. And as a result, you may feel you are not successful, even when you are. Kind of like Steve. Now, the second type of negative self-criticism is comparative self-criticism. This is when you're constantly comparing yourself to others, and then you're finding yourself lacking. You know, somebody gets a promotion at work, and you start feeling that the reason that they got the promotion is they're so much better and smarter than you. Or you see somebody on the street with a very attractive mate, and you think, oh, I wish I was more attractive. That way I could attract the mate I want. Or you go over to somebody's house who lives in a very upscale neighborhood, and you think, I wish I could be smart enough to make enough money to live in this neighborhood. The problem with constantly comparing yourself with others is that it makes it easy to view others as better than you. Now you don't feel like you measure up, and after a while, this will damage your self-esteem. And this can result in ruined relationships with your friends, family members, co-workers, employees. Left unchecked, it will hijack your happiness and success. And this was exactly what was happening with Steve. Steve had gotten married about a year before he came to do work with me. And although Steve was a smart guy, he had never thought going to school was all that important. What happened is he had gone to a couple of years of college, and then during his second summer college break, he had been painting houses to make money for school. That's when he thought, I can do this. And he dropped out of college. Now, like I told you, Steve did good work and his business grew. He was successful by almost anybody's standards. But after he got married, he began to doubt his success. That was because his brother-in-law was an attorney that belonged to a big law firm. Not only was his brother-in-law more educated than he was, but he also made a lot more money. Now, it took a few sessions to uncover that Steve had fallen into that trap of self-doubt because he was unconsciously comparing himself to his brother-in-law. But after a couple of sessions, I gave Steve the Mindful Mind Hacking tool, What Was I Just Thinking, to take home and to practice. By the way, this Mindful Mind Hack is part of my free course, 3 Mindful Mind Hacks to Supercharge Your Success. Now, at Steve's next session, we looked at his results, and then using a couple more Mindful Mind Hacks, Steve was able to drop his self-criticism and start growing his business again. Here's how Mindful Mind Hacking works. Mindful Mind Hacking helps you, like Steve, learn to control your thinking. Your thinking controls your actions. Your repeated actions turn into habits, and your habits control your focus. Here's what's key. You get done what you focus on. Your habitual focus becomes your destiny. But it all starts with learning to control your thinking. Would you like to take control of your destiny? Well, if you do, you can learn more about these tools in my free mini course, 3 Mindful Mind Hacks to Supercharge Your Success. This free mini course will give you 3 Mindful Mind Hacks that will help you take back control of your thinking so you can start to focus on the things you really want in life. In other words, this mini course will help you take control over your destiny. And it's free! So what unseen force is keeping you from getting this mini course? Just click on the link below on this page to pick up your free copy.